I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Thank you for joining us. Whereabouts are you right now?
I'm in LA.
In your home studio or
Yeah, I'm in my home studio.
right? How's that looking? Can you give us a little spin of your phone so we can see your setup? Are you comfortable
Yeah,
doing?
yeah, sure. So, got a little fragrance collection here, and here's the space.
Nice. I
Ocean
like.
wave monitors. Yeah, it's just an interesting, cozy environment.
Yeah, I like that you've got a window right there as well to get some nice
Um,
in.
yeah, you need a light. I spent, so many years in dark studios. I literally, being in those studios, you don't even know what time of day it is. You don't know if it's night, morning, afternoon,
Yeah.
you know.
W-
So
Was was that one of the key things that you really wanted when you were setting up your place? That you wanted some of that natural light?
yeah, I think it's good for us as humans. We're like complicated houseplants. We need water, light, and food. And and I was like, yeah, I was really kind of tired of not having a space that had some light. So
Fair enough. Nice. And I had read about your fragrance collection, and we just saw a little sneak. So tell me a little bit about that fragrance collection.
it's just something of a hobby of mine. It's kind of akin to like wine in the sense of you're not drinking the perfume, but it has very similar attributes. And I got into it, kind of young, and I decided to incorporate that into my studio. Instead of having a traditional studio space, clients can come in and smell the fragrances that they want. It's a cool conversation piece,
Yeah.
and I just try to really just make my space my own. And being in other studios and other facilities, you kind of see that it may lose some of that individual touch. And
Mm.
I was like, okay, well, everyone in LA has speakers and mixing equipment, but they don't have a fragrance collection or a plant or something like that. So I figured, it's
I
it's
love
it's just
that.
something I enjoy.
I love that. So presumably your studio smells very nice as well.
Yeah, and I have candles as well, so it smells very nice.
That's awesome. When did you learn that, or when do you think it dawned on you that having a studio, working in the studio, there was more to it than just a technical element? There's also that idea of setting the mood and making a space which is nice to work in. Was that something that you instantly kind of clocked on, or did it sort of dawn on you after you'd been working for a few years?
Definitely after a few years, because I feel like, working with artists, they always, they love an ambiance. They love, artists may love candles, and they kind of love a space where they could feel vulnerable. And I feel like a lot of those studio situations, they're harder to get comfortable because you kind of feel like you're on the clock a little bit because
Mm.
you got a huge mixing console, and you got the microphones, and you got an enclosed booth. So I've been seeing a lot recently of producers having home spaces, mixers having, a house in like a back house situation where it cozies up the environment a lot. So like, being in studios, I kind of noticed how I felt going into a room versus going into a space that was kind of curated.
Gotcha. And so
Yeah.
this we're in now is in LA, and I know
Yeah.
that you moved from New York. Was it just before the pandemic that you moved over to LA?
It was like during the pandemic. My girlfriend and I, Amanda, we decided to just go. I had a lot of people kind of saying, "Hey, you should move to LA," but during a pandemic, when is the best time to move? So you kind of have to feel the situation out. And my good friend Stu White was like, "Just go." He was like, you can't really wait. If you wait, you'll never know when the best time to go. So sometimes it's best to just jump and hope that you're making the right decision. But if you wait too long, it could be a little too long. So you just got to jump.
Yeah. And how, I mean, of all the times to make that jump in a pandemic must have been interesting. I mean, did that present challenges to sort of setting yourself up there and establishing yourself there?
Yeah, well, it was a little bit easier because my good friend Nick and my manager Max, also a great friend of mine, they both lived here. and I
Right.
came here a few years ago to do mix work with Nick, and uh, I knew the area. So like since I knew the area, I was already comfortable. And when I stayed here the first time, I felt just at home. So I was like, this is kind of where I want to be. So it made it a lot easier than just going to LA without having a game plan or even knowing the neighborhood that you're going to be in.
Yeah, and that Nick that you mentioned, I think, is Nick Lee,
Yeah,
who
Nick Lee.
he's been a guest on the live stream previously. It was great to chat with Nick. So how did that friendship and that collaboration strike up?
Nick and I met at a Waves event. Waves makes audio plugins, and he was just walking around, and I kind of had I think I just talked to people, and we started talking, and he said that he's going to Juilliard, but he's making pop music. And once he said that, I kind of told myself, I need to hear whatever it is that you're working, because in Juilliard, people you think of conservatory, you think of jazz, dance, acting. Uh, so he gave me his business card, and I remember going in the subway, and I texted him. I'm like, "When's the next time are you free for I can come see your studio space?" And from there, we just hung out a lot and listened to a lot of music, and we just started working pretty much immediately.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it, to find, I guess, like-minded people and people that you do have, you can sort of collaborate with, because so much of what this industry about is knowing people and making contacts. Did
Yeah.
that come easily to you? Were you comfortable putting yourself out there like that?
Yeah, I mean, I come from New York, people in New York are out there anyway, so I kind of feel like I have nothing to lose. And for me, it's about, mixing is about, art, and it's about the technical aspects of the music, but it's mainly about people. It's more about how you're dealing with people and how you're working with these artists than the technical. So I always knew that I like conversating with people, and I liked working on music, and it just, you know, I wasn't afraid of any kind of like rejection. I was just gonna just say, hey, I'm a mixer. I like working on music, and I'm open to hearing people's music, because at the time, Nick had just started producing, and he had one song that he showed me, and I loved it, and I was like, what else do you have? You
Mm,
know?
nice. So you mentioned that you're from New York, and I understand. So music was important to you from quite a young age, I think. Was it violin that you learned when you were about
Yeah.
11?
Yeah,
What?
when I was 11, I started off in violin. I was like a history geek, so I read that Albert Einstein also played the violin, so I just picked it up because I'm like, oh, he did that, and I lugged it around, and I learned a bit, and then I decided to change to the flute, and then I was like, okay, this is a very difficult, in both difficult instruments to master. You need the dexterity and all that stuff, and from there, I kind of saw the other side of music, which was the recording side, and I found that out by accident. Um, pure accident.
How so?
My friend, I don't know, back in the day, Windows used to have this thing called Sound Recorder, which is like this mono. You record and you hit play and it rewinds, and uh, we just used to make little songs on there. He used to beatbox and I used to just rap, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I heard myself back, and I'm like, wow, this is something I could do this. I felt like this is something that made sense to me. The
Yeah,
recording of music.
right.
So
How old were you at that point?
I was 11. So
Right.
I got on, I learned it pretty quickly, and then I got more serious when I was 15, and I
Mm,
was kind of asking for things, instead of birthday gifts like money, I would ask for like, can I get a Zoom recorder? Can I get a microphone? Can I get a keyboard? Things like that, and that's kind of how I started into producing as well.
yeah. So, but where are you learning all that from? Because my timeline might be out here, but they're probably, is this pre like all the tutorials that are on YouTube now? Did you have many
Yeah.
resources to find? Like, how
No,
did
no, there was literally nothing. There was no tutorials. There was no mixer to masters. There was no Pensado's place. Um, I was just learning it by, just you could watch some music theory stuff. I knew a little bit of that, and I just read the manual, to be honest.
Right.
So the manual will tell you, hey, how this is how you record it, this is how you set it up, and it's just trial by error. Asking friends who also recorded how to
Yeah.
do things. And when I was in high school, I had a friend, Will, and his parents were musicians. His father was like the musical director, I guess, for the Platters, and
Oh,
he was also, yeah, he was also a pianist. And the whole time I'm hanging out with my friend, his family has a studio on top of their garage, like an actual studio with a Neumann mic and Dyne Audios, and they just had this piano in there, and I just never knew that they had that. And
right.
then I hung out with them, and they would help me learn recording and mixing stuff. And they also had Pro Tools, which was very expensive to own at the time, which was around 2007, I think.
Yeah.
Really expensive.
That's amazing. And in terms of your listening, like who are you listening to? Were you actively seeking out producers or artists that you loved the sound of their records? Like who was informing what you were actually hearing?
Listening to a bunch of older records like the Beatles, Sinatra. I kind of gravitated to those older kind of records, and also I was listening to a lot of like pop music because I
Mm.
was, early 2000s, hip hop, and the Neptunes were doing really well. And yeah, I listened to a whole bunch of music. And my family background is very interesting. I'll listen to a lot of like Russian music, and then listen to a lot of like Beatles, and just all over the place.
Right. So what is that family background then? Presumably there's some Russian in
Yeah, yeah.
in
Well, yeah. My father was born in Ukraine, which was Russia at the time, and my mother is Jamaican. So I'm
Wow.
black and white. So they had very very interesting music taste. Like my mom would listen to the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill and a bunch of old doo-wop records. And even though my father was a white guy, he listened to Biggie. So it's like, it's like, and then play some Russian obscure music. So it's just, for me, it was not only did I have a unique, like, actual background of, you know, culture, my parents just had very interesting music taste, which informed, you know, what
Yeah.
I thought was good, I guess.
Yeah. But art also really important for you as a teen? Am I right in thinking like fine art was something that you pursued quite
Yes,
heavily?
yeah. So I was also into art, into painting, and I was in a gifted and talented program when I was 11. And so I painted a lot. So I did that from, I want to say, 11 to like 16. So that's also informed me too. I was good working with colors, and it was very tedious work, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So
Are there creative things that you learned from that you think still resonate in the work you do mixing?
yeah, mixing, I kind of see it like visually, almost like the music. I kind of sense it differently. There's also like color palettes in music. I always like feel like music have these color associations,
Right.
and it's just really how it makes me feel, and that the detailedness of like painting, for example, and or taking a photo, composition, and how things affect your mood affect greatly how I think about music and production and arrangement and mixing. So they all kind of tie in their
Yeah.
own way.
I think that's really interesting. So does that mean that if you're working with an artist and they say, I really want it to sound more purple, or I really want it to sound more blue, as some artists do describe their music in those colors, does that mean that
Yeah.
you have to understanding what they're meaning?
Yeah, I think I have a little bit more of an understanding. Someone's purple could be different in a
Right.
sense of the frequency spectrum, but I do kind of understand it. Like I was talking to a good friend of mine, and an artist I work with, Jeffrey Miller, and I was mixing one of his songs, and I said it sounds a little too metallic, like a little too silver-ish, and he was like, "Yes, it feels that way," and I was like, "Oh, let's just dial some of that back," but that could just easily be interpreted as sounding a little too digital or a little too crispy in a certain area. So
Yeah.
um,
I
I
love I think that's great. So then at what point, and someone asked in the comments earlier, when did you know music was for you? But yeah, like so you're developing these skills as a producer, all very DIY. When did you start thinking, right, this is actually going to be the career that I pursue?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I just did it. I started off as an artist producer because I didn't fall into mixing like I want to be a mix engineer, but I need to release my music, so I learned mixing through production and through arranging. And from that point, I was just doing it, as an artist and getting my skill set to a level where like, oh, I understand compression and EQ and stuff
Mm,
like that. And then in college, I got selected out of 10 in the world to learn from Bruce Swedien, who was Michael Jackson's mixer and engineer. And that once I did that, I was like, okay, this is going to be the career because I could produce and mix for myself, but I could work on a whole bunch of music by mixing for anyone, basically.
right. I mean, that sounds like such an incredible opportunity being able to work with Bruce, because as you mentioned, Michael Jackson, he sort of worked with Michael Jackson on Thriller and Bad. I think he
Yeah,
also Quincy Jones and Jennifer Lopez and Santana, like an
yeah,
incredible resume. And you had like 7-day intense course with him in Florida. Is that correct?
yeah. It was really intense. I didn't expect it to be what it was. So we had like 3 days of acoustic training. So before Bruce said anything about his mixing technique or recording technique, we spent 3 days with Art Noxon at the basically learning about his tube chops, how he hears music, psychoacoustics, how the room affects uh, the recorded material, and how it affects the mix position. And I remember leaving college for a week and saying I just went, from college back into college in the sense of,
Right.
we were outside listening to the birds and listening to natural environments with Bruce to figure out how he listens to music, how he's interpreting natural acoustic things. So
Wow.
yeah, it was insane.
How did that change your perspective? Because as you said, you wouldn't have gone there thinking you're going to be listening to bird noises out in nature.
Yeah,
Did
yeah,
it change your perspective on how you approached mixing?
yeah. It does because mixing is really you're really listening and you're adjusting to what you're hearing. So you need to have a sense of connection to the music, and Bruce always had that deep connection where he even passed out sheet music, and if he was mixing a song, there would be the sheet music that came with the song, and he was very intent on the music first, and everything else falls into that. Like he used to say, go outside and listen to the band perform, listen to what you're recording, because when he started, there was no compressors or EQs. um, he recorded like Oscar Peterson 3 albums in one night. He has a lot of history recording great musicians, and it was just interesting to see how he thought about that, and then that rubbed off on me in a sense of like listening before I EQ something or before I compress. Like, what am I listening for, and what am I going to enhance, or what am I going to leave alone?
Wow, that's so interesting. A question just popped up, which hopefully I remember, but I think it was, how do you process your reverb for hip hop/pop? If I remember that question correctly, um, do you have an
Yeah,
answer to
it depends on the song. Things could be more sparse if you listen to the producer mix and there's a lot of verb going on. If they split the dry signal from the wet signal, you could filter the wet signal a little bit differently and then retreat the dry. Um, with hip hop music, I add a little room, a short room sound, because sometimes the vocal may be a little bit too dry and disconnected from the music. So I kind of try to sneak in a little bit of a small room verb to make that vocal sound a little bit more lively, and it gives it more of a presence as well. So it really depends on what you're getting, because different songs have different amounts of reverb that needs to be applied to make it sound like it's in its the genre that it's supposed to be in, right? So you're
Yeah,
not going
yeah.
to be flooding, a folk record with a ton of reverb. So
You mentioned, so obviously that learning with Bruce Swedien, but I
yeah,
think you to do a mix with masterclass with Manny Marroquin in around
yeah,
about 13.
yeah.
What was that experience like? What did you learn from Manny?
Oh, Manny's one of the best. I mean, he's such a kind individual, and he really taught me that, like Bruce did, it's really about the song. You have to listen to what you're working on and then react. I think sometimes people want to react to the song quickly. They're like, oh, I'm gonna treat the drums like this, I'm gonna treat the vocals like this. But he's really listening, and then he's using his taste to shape the record. And yeah, he doesn't really need anything other than a pair of NS10s and himself to really mix an incredible. I mean, I've seen him mix, and he doesn't need much, and it sounds like Manny Man. It sounds like Manny.
Yeah,
Um, uh, because I think people think that you need a ton of equipment to sound like yourself, but you know, I think Art Tatum only needed a piano, right? It doesn't matter what piano he needed; he just needed one. So
that's
that's
it.
kind of the approach is really listening and understanding what you're going to do, and
Yeah.
then have the ability to do that.
Yeah. So that was 2013. Your time with
Yeah.
Bruce was 2010. So it's now obviously 2022. So that's 9 years, 9 years since you had that experience with Manning. What has how important has perseverance been to keep going for that, up until current day and obviously into the future? But I imagine there must have been, it must really have drawn on your reserves of perseverance to keep going to get to this point. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably one of the hardest career choices anyone can make. We're not different that, we are artists in the sense that we're putting ourselves out there, and we have, a sonic signature. And yeah, it definitely wears on you. People ask, hey, you're still doing music, and you can have, albums on billboards and things like that. And uh, I think it's about remembering your why, like remembering why you started. And I just keep telling myself the reason why I started is like I love music, and I just reinforce that instead of reinforcing or saying oh, this is a bad session. It's a bad day. It's not a bad life kind of situation. So to persevere is just to remember why you're doing it, and to focus on things that make you happy. Focus on working with artists who make you happy, producers that make you happy. Feel like you're contributing. Those
Mm.
are ways to help with the perseverance and for someone to feel like they can keep going. Um, because it is an extremely difficult job.
Yeah. When do you think you got that perspective?
Um, just being in it, like you kind of just get build up kind of tolerance to the business, and you say, hey, I fell down once, I'll pick up again. I fell down twice, I'll pick up again. I was reading about Serena Williams, and I was reading about all her challenges, and I didn't know that she had so many where she fell ranking. She went from like number one in the world to like number 180, and she went
Wow.
up and down in her ranking, but she never quit, and that's why she's one of the greatest athletes of all time.
Mm.
Is her perseverance to come back. I mean, you've seen some of these tennis matches, like how does Serena Williams and Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer, how did they keep going hours and hours and just intense because they love the sport?
Yeah.
How do you come back from, I'm not in sports, but like, how do you come back from injury? You have to build that up and continuing remembering why you're doing it, and staying in love with the sport, staying in love with mixing. Mixing is always like a thing that I'm always going to love because there's always so much to learn,
Right.
like an infinite amount of knowledge to learn.
Yeah. I love that you can pull from other disciplines. Do you know what I mean? You can take that analogy you just gave then of Serena Williams' journey. I really like the way that you can apply that to your own career, even though obviously they're very, very different disciplines.
Yeah, very different.
So when was so given the fact that it's a very hard business to break into, when was there a moment where you felt like you had broken into it? Like, all right, I'm getting a bit of momentum here.
Uh, yeah, I feel like, working on some earlier records definitely helped. Nick, working with Nick definitely helps with that because he's always pushing the limits of what he could do, and the artists that he works with as well, able to work with. And I think, situations like that, working with Bruce, you feel like you're kind of leveling up and leveling up slowly. It's not just one record and you're off to the moon. I think it's really about each record kind of is a stepping stone to the next. So I don't know if that answers your question,
No, it
but
does. Well, I mean, if we think about some of your credits, working with artists like CL or Stray Kids or Rachel Platten,
mm,
what's your process? So the song arrives in your inbox, or however it is that you get the stems and the music.
yeah.
What's step one? What do you do?
Step one is I listen to the producer mix, and I may listen if they're an artist like a Rachel Platten, I may listen to back catalog just to see where that artist has been sonically,
Hmm.
and I listen to it once, and I start organizing the session, make sure everything's correct, the tempo is correct, make sure the arrangement is correct. Like sometimes a producer may send an older session, and all of a sudden you're mixing a song that's a completely different arrangement. So you have
Right.
to just make sure that your arrangement and the record that everyone approved is the same record. And from there, I just kind of let the music guide me, and I go back and forth on the rough to make sure I'm not straying too far from what they're doing, and send it off when I feel happy, where I feel connected to the music. And I feel like there's nothing stopping me from having, a good listening experience. Like I try to listen to it as a regular listener. I mix it as a professional, and then I try to let go and listen to it. And if I can get through the whole song, I know I'm ready to send it.
Right. Is that a nerve-wracking moment?
A little bit, because you send it off, you don't know what they're gonna say or think, but you only have to trust that you did the best that you can, and from there, I feel like I have pretty high standards. Like my standards may be really, really, really high. So I feel like if I hit those standards, hopefully those standards make the artist and the producer happy, and yeah, I just love the collaborating process, and I get notes back sometimes a little bit of notes, sometimes a little bit longer, but from there, just try to make them happy.
Yeah. Who is like when you are doing a mix, are you talking to you mentioned you listen to the producer mix, but do you talk to the producer? Do you talk to the artist, to the A&R? Do you talk to
Yeah,
any of these people, or do you just put your head down and go for it?
it depends on the situation. If I'm working with a independent artist, I'm working with this great artist, Casey Conroy and Willie Cohen, who's a producer, and I had them in the room. We talk, we hang out. I get to know them as people.
Mhm.
We might get a drink of coffee, and yeah, in that case, you have an advantage because you know them as people. And then also, we can have a conversation. Sometimes an artist will call me and say, "Hey, I'm really excited about this record. Can I talk to you about it?"
Mm.
And they may say, "Hey, this is kind of what I was thinking about." Sometimes I have an opposite situation where I just get a record in the inbox and I have to just mix it,
Right.
and I have to go off. That's where your experience comes in, and you do your job. You do the best that you can, and it's good. It's good that, like, the more experience you have, the more you could pull from prior mixes, prior sessions, lessons learned that you're like, oh yeah, I've done this a million times before. I'll do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there one bit of advice or one truism that you have received over the years that has really stuck with you and that you would also pass on to other people?
uh Truism. I just think it's about, like, focusing on, what makes you happy, and like establishing that it's going to be a long journey, but it's always, it's always going to be good for someone to continue like working and focusing on what they love, and not letting these hardships or these things stop them from achieving their dreams. Because I think now more than ever, anyone can achieve their dreams. I've seen friends achieve great, things in this industry just by not giving up and working hard
Mm.
and being kind. Kindness it will get you very far. But
Right.
people don't say that for just any reason.
Yeah.
Um,
Very
and
important.
likability, like if you're a good person, people are gonna like to have you in the room, which is going to open a lot of opportunities for you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Even when you're not, fully prepared, if they like you, you'll get in the room and you'll stay and you'll get prepared.
Yeah. Absolutely. I thought I read a story where I don't know if your manager gave you this nickname, but Mix Murphy, is that one of the nicknames that you've been given?
No, it wasn't one of the nicknames. It was something that my manager kind of said. I had this. It wasn't even a nickname in the hospital. It was I was born premature, very early, so I had 20% chance of living, and they they said, your name is Murphy because like Murphy's Law. They said, the worst thing that can happen will happen, and surviving that uh, gave me such renewal on life, because I'm living and I'm healthy now, and it's it was just one of those things. I have a podcast and I kind of spoke about the story a little bit more in length, but that's where I get some of that perseverance too as well. Is like, not only did I persevere in my own challenges, I saw my family overcome a lot of challenges as well. So I'm like, I'm not starting from scratch. Like you're sitting on top of giants, basically other people in your family, other immigrants who sacrificed a lot so we could do what we love to do. So, um, yeah, it's not a nickname. It's just something that Max came up with. Max is always coming up with something.
Right. So Sam, just to finish up, and thank you so much for all your time. What are
Thank
you
you.
excited about now? Like when you look forward to the near future, and 1 year, 2 years, what's really exciting you about the profession of mixing and your career in general?
Yeah, I think I was really happy how everyone is so open, online, sharing the knowledge that they have. And I just think the profession of mixing is growing. What the digital technologies like Atmos is very exciting. And yeah, I just think there's a lot of good things to come. And there's a lot of amazing artists out there that, they have the ability to, have mixing and have connections that otherwise wouldn't be possible. So
Right.
now I think it's a lot better and even more amazing to be an artist now than any other time.
Yeah, nice.
So
And so what does the rest of the, like, do you knock off now? Do you have to mix now? Like, what is your, like,
yeah, I'm probably
schedule?
gonna prep for another mix, and maybe have dinner a
Right.
little later. But yeah, I think the schedule is kind of open a little bit, and when I get a song, I kind of start working on it in the early morning. I get up pretty early, so I'm
Okay.
mixing fairly early as long as I need to. Sometimes the time zones make you stay up a lot later than normal. So, but
Right.
whatever it takes to get these songs done. So.
Yeah. Nice. So when you do a mix in the morning, do you then get away from it for a couple hours and then come back and re-listen, or do you tend just to go in one burst?
Uh, I tend to take a few breaks. You take breaks and then I might take a walk. I like walking a lot, so I just walk around the block and then come back and then listen to it. And that kind of just refreshes your ear. You're not listening to anything. You're not listening to music, and then you hear it again, and then you're like, oh, I can make these changes. It's about staying as objective as possible and
Yeah.
listening to the song and getting away from it, getting back into the song, getting away from it, and then you'll have like a good balance, so to
Yeah.
speak. No pun intended.
I, well, look, thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate you making the time to chat with us. Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you so much.
And we will, I'm sure we'll keep in touch and hopefully speak again soon. Take care,
All
mate.
right. Thank you. Thank you.
See
Bye
you. Bye
bye.
bye.